The story begins with fallen warriors in a mountain lair where an exchange was demanded to rescue the princess. Inside, a delicate hand is revealed, bound in chains. Soon after, the prisoner opens her eyes with difficulty. At that moment, the young Alina appears. Suddenly, a white dragon charges forward, destroying the pillars beside her. A knight then descends from the skies and attacks the beast with his skill. The warrior invokes a curse of ice that begins to freeze the dragon's body. Even with his body crystallized, the creature roars while he prepares a new attack. At that moment, the princess watches the scene and recognizes the impressive strength of her savior. Right after, she also notices that the knight is very handsome. Shaking her head side to side, she tries to push the thought away. Next, Alina calls out to the knight, who turns to hear what she has to say. Though he doesn't understand, he hears the princess declare that he went too far just for her sake. Soon after, she decides to reward his effort with the greatest honor for a knight. Princess Alina of the Ashland Empire then offers her foot for the knight to kiss. However, the warrior refuses the offer and says he has no interest in dirty, torn socks. Outraged, the young woman screams and questions his lack of manners. Still chained, she asks why men come there if not for her. As soon as he hears the question, he asks whether Alina really believed his presence was because of her. Floating in the air, the knight declares he would never do the same as those weak NPCs. With a smile, he reveals that his goal has always been the same. Immediately, he declares he came only for the evil dragon. Then he yells at the creature, asking why its face is red, while the princess observes. He explains he has no interest in marrying a princess without ambition. His hand grips the hilt of his sword. In that instant, he raises the weapon and says the most exciting part of the game is taming the dragon. With a strike, he finishes the attack and announces the stage is complete. Back in reality, a young man with glasses celebrates in front of his computer for being a gaming genius. At the same time, a hand smacks his head with a rolled-up paper, yelling that he'll have to repeat the school year. The teacher scolds him for using his brain only to play games, asking if he uses his backside to study. He also scolds him for his grades, saying he'll never give his parents a future. Staring straight ahead, the young man remains silent while the teacher yells that his game coins are worthless. Suddenly, the student snatches the roll of paper from the man's hands in a quick motion. Surprised, the other glares with pure fury. Eyes fixed on his tablet, the boy asks to be allowed to finish the match first. With eyes now glowing red, the teacher screams his name in a fit of rage. He charges and attacks the boy with the paper, shouting at him to leave with his video game. The tablet screen shatters, and the world around begins to dissolve into digital code. Thus, the student's consciousness merges with his knight avatar and a cascade of numbers. Soon his eyes open with a distortion effect showing his transition into the new world. Now fully armored, he looks at his hands and wonders if he was transported into the game. Then he realizes his body is moving on its own beyond his control. The figure charges and attacks a giant white dragon while screaming non-stop. He falls straight into the creature's mouth, sending his sword flying away. The blade lands near Alina, who is chained and in torn clothes, letting out a startled cry. Moments later, the princess is on the ground, the chains that bound her now broken. Confused, the knight looks back in her direction. The young woman notices the dragon no longer moves under his weight. Immediately, she questions if that was truly his preference. The knight yells no, denying the accusation. Alina leans forward, pointing out that he interrupted the moment. The princess grabs the sword, wishes happiness to the couple, and leaves, while he tries to explain in vain. Instantly, the dragon appears behind the warrior with glowing eyes. The creature fires a massive energy beam at him. With the impact, his body is thrown backward into the smoke. Fallen on the ground, he sees the dragon's silhouette approaching and realizes it's all over. Then the beast transforms into a shadowy figure, lamenting that it will be the end of the game. He remains lying on the ground with eyes closed. Suddenly, a foot clad in sandals and black socks appears before him. The foot lifts the knight's face and he questions the black sock. It is revealed that the dragon has turned into a woman who accuses him of completely transforming her. As soon as she steps on him, the knight tries to say something. Right away, the dragoness calls him cute but complains about something heavy she doesn't want anymore. With a smile, the boy replies that even an evil dragon can be very cute. Then the creature forbids him to laugh and strikes him with her tail. He keeps being whipped and asks why he can't laugh, while she explains that she just can't hold back. With that, the knight grabs her tail and demands that she stop treating him like a toy. Suddenly, the dragoness reacts to the grip on her tail. Her body twists and she leans back. The warrior asks what happened as she continues to react. Soon after, the dragoness calls him a despicable outsider and asks how he knew. He shows her a heart-shaped mark on her tail, while the creature reveals that this is her most sensitive spot. Thus, the knight looks at the heart-shaped mark in his hands. The dragoness begs him not to touch there again, while the scene is covered by shadows. The knight teases her, asking if the evil dragon was really this useless, while she begs him to stop. As he laughs, the dragoness threatens not to forgive him and he dares her to try. Suddenly, a voice calls out in the distance, shouting for the guards to come to that place. At the same time, another knight tells his companions that he heard the evil dragon had been defeated. With that, the warrior turns to the cave entrance and wonders why more people are arriving. While the dragoness complains that her tail is sore, he holds it and realizes she is very suspicious. Determined, the knight concludes he needs to hide her somehow. Soon, an idea comes to his mind and he prepares to act. He then tries to hide the dragoness's tail under his cape while shouting for her to get in. As the kingdom's guards arrive, their leader announces that they came to rescue her highness at the king's command. The newcomers then watch as the knight asks the dragoness to relax while trying to conceal her tail. Not understanding the scene, the guards stand still in silence, simply watching. Soon the knight turns to them and shouts that the situation is far too improper. With that, the leader of the guards accuses him of doing strange things to the princess. Immediately, all the guards give him a thumbs up and encourage him to continue, leaving him speechless. Still confused, the warrior asks for a moment to process the information. Then he turns to the dragoness and asks the guards why they called her a princess. The boy angrily questions how the soldiers don't recognize their own princess, while they ask if it's really her. The leader explains that they last saw her before the kidnapping, when she was still a child. Realizing she looks more beautiful now, the dragoness reacts in embarrassment as one of the guards stares at her. Soon after, the leader invites the princess and the prince consort to leave as the king is waiting. Not understanding, the knight asks why he was called prince consort and the guard confirms the title. At once, all the guards celebrate him as a great hero for saving the princess. The leader then assures him that the king will give him any reward he desires, not just the title of prince. Immediately, the dragoness tries to protest, claiming she isn't the princess, but rather a noble evil creature. Quickly, the knight covers her mouth with his hand so no one hears her. The soldiers turn back as they hear her muffled sounds. Thus, the boy makes up a story that the princess said she's hungry and that they should all leave at once. With that, the whole group begins walking out of the cave, following the knight and the dragoness. The warrior declares that since he already has a miserable real life, he must rise again inside the game. Soon after, he leans in and tells his companion to cooperate with the plan. The creature reacts with wide eyes, unable to say anything. With that, the knight threatens that he will keep bothering her tail until she reacts. Even under pressure, the dragoness declares she will not give in and calls him a fool. As soon as they arrive, the group is met with the impressive architecture of the royal castle. Inside the palace, a full banquet is already laid out on the table. Soon the royal family gathers around the food, while a maid announces that everything was prepared for the princess. Then the servant fills one of the goblets with wine. With that, the dragoness sits at the table and, enchanted by the smell of the food, accepts being the princess. She then calls out to the king with a piece of meat in her hand, and he weeps as he receives her back after 10 years. Even so, the queen reminds her husband that their daughter had black hair, but he asks her not to worry about details. Beside them, Prince Raji comments that his sister's development was better than he expected. Soon the queen agrees with her son that the situation is advantageous, while the knight and the dragoness eat. As she eats, the creature simply observes the behavior of that family. Suddenly, a maid approaches and says she cannot continue. The young woman explains that a princess must use fork and knife to cut food elegantly. The dragoness ignores the instruction and keeps holding the bird with her hands. With her mouth full, she glares at the maid in protest. The sound of her chewing draws the attention of everyone at the table, including the king, the queen, and the knight. Right after, the dragoness brings the drumstick bone to her mouth and cleans it completely. With that, she sets the bird's skeleton on the table and licks her lips in satisfaction. The knight finds the scene strange, but the royal family confirms that the real Alina never wasted food. Suddenly, the hall doors explode, throwing the guards outside across the floor. As everyone looks in fear toward the entrance, a female voice declares that the dragoness is not the princess. Soon a warrior with a sword on her back enters the hall and accuses her of being an imposter. Thus, the knight recognizes her as the prisoner he had left chained in the cave less than a day ago. The newcomer then stomps hard on the banquet table. Before the king, she bows and introduces herself as the true Alina, breaking plates along the way. The boy watches the scene while the dragoness calmly keeps eating at his side. The king then faces a dilemma with two Alinas and suggests a lottery to decide who will be the princess. Hearing that suggestion, the real Alina screams that he has no right to say such a thing. She grabs him by the collar and accuses him of being useless for not recognizing his own daughter. Even without letting go, the princess continues her scolding with her head lowered. Then Alina yells that she has no father like him, one who only cares about having children but not raising them. Because of that, the king reacts, shocked by the harshness of her words. At that moment, the royal family recognizes the attitude and tone of voice as those of their true daughter. For this reason, they all embrace her with joy, while the knight questions how that family's bonds even work. Realizing the family is insane, the knight decides to leave while the dragoness keeps eating. Suddenly, a sword flies toward him, and a voice commands him to stop. The weapon embeds itself into the pillar beside his head as the princess accuses him of trying to flee. The knight then turns to see who dared attack him like that. The princess glares at him and finally recognizes him. She then accuses him of being the perverted knight from the cave, but he insists it was all a misunderstanding. Because of that, the royal family grows interested in the story, while he complains they are focusing on the wrong thing. The princess laments that he abandoned the dragon even after the romantic scene she had witnessed. She immediately accuses him of being involved with the imposter. At that moment, Alina slaps the dragoness's hand and forbids her from eating the food, while the knight tries to explain himself. The princess presses on, calling her rustic and inferior. Suddenly, the dragoness breathes flames in the princess's direction. After the clash, the knight and Alina appear covered in soot while he tries to downplay what happened. Because of this, the princess leans forward and insults them, calling them a despicable couple. Next, Alina orders the soldiers to capture them to be displayed in the public square. The knight turns to the dragoness and asks why she is also blaming him for the situation. As the soldiers approach, he shouts for her to spit out all the food, but she retorts that she only obeyed because of his threat. At that instant, one of the guards leaps, preparing for the attack. Soon after, the soldier raises his axe to strike the knight and the dragoness, who brace themselves for the impact. As soon as the axe strikes the ground, a fissure opens, spreading fire and dust. Right after the attack, the knight and the dragoness watch the guard struggling to pull the weapon stuck in the floor. At that moment, he faces the situation with a smile on his face. Suddenly, more soldiers appear and rush forward to capture him. The knight dodges his spear and complains that they are really trying to attack him. Surrounded by guards, he declares that he came there to have fun, not to get beaten up. With that, his eyes lock on the enemies ahead. An energy begins to emanate from his hand, showing that he no longer intends to hold back. At this moment, the king and queen are startled by the light emerging from him. Beside them, the dragoness watches the scene intently. Soon after, the knight summons a sword of energy in his hand. With his body covered in an aura, he prepares to strike. Because of the strong energy, the soldiers retreat, while one of them screams that he's going to die. At that instant, the sword falls to the ground and turns into a small, harmless creature. The knight grabs the pixelated weapon and screams in frustration at the bug that froze the game. Not understanding, he looks at a pixelated sign that suddenly appears in the hall. Right after, a message announces him as a disqualified player, leaving him in shock. At that moment, Princess Alina tries to hold back her laughter. With that, she and the guards burst into laughter and mock him. Alina reveals herself as an NPC of justice and says she thought he was stronger. The knight then repeats the term NPC of justice out loud. Soon after, the princess draws her sword and claims that he is nothing special. Still not understanding, the knight calls her the fallen justice from the heavens. Suddenly, Alina charges and attacks with the sword, forcing him to dodge. Startled, she knocks him to the ground and accuses him of deceiving pure girls. Right after, the princess steps on his chest. At that moment, the knight reacts to the pressure of her foot on his armor. With glowing eyes, Alina declares that she will take them down one by one. Suddenly, she is attacked before she can strike him. In the sequence, she is thrown back, destroying the pillars. Amid the rubble, the horns of the dragoness stand out. The princess then sits, wounded, and asks who she really is. With that, the dragoness rips her own dress and declares that she has endured enough. Soon after, she slaps the knight on the head for involving her with that pig. Then the creature reveals her form with wings and hugs him tightly. As she squeezes him, she declares that he is nothing but her long-term meal ticket. The royal family reacts abnormally, while the queen laments the boredom and the prince says he also wants to join. At the same time, the guards have the normal reaction and scream in terror at the sight of the dragon. In a city near the castle, a cry announces that the evil dragon has left its valley. Far away, a woman sleeps peacefully in her bed. At that instant, her hand grips the sheet tightly. Soon after, she wakes up stretching. Suddenly, the woman sits up in bed and lets out a scream. Frightened, the Saint Cadonia covers her face with her hands. At her bedside, a figure approaches and asks if she had another nightmare. At that moment, the saint recognizes the visitor as the paladin Shu Laihang. Cadonia then asks what brought her there. In response, the paladin of the sacred sanctuary explains that she brings news from Ashland. Then, Shu Laihang reveals that the information is about the dragon. As she walks toward the bed, the saint watches her carefully. With that, the warrior lifts Cadonia's chin and comments that she seems resentful toward the dragon. Soon after, Shu Laihang offers to sleep with the saint that night. The next day, a blonde woman with animal ears finds the paladin outside the room. With that, she criticizes her for spending the night with the saint while others work hard to gather information. The newcomer then approaches and says that such behavior was very selfish. In response, Shu Laihang bites the tip of her glove and replies that protecting the chosen one's sleep is her duty. The woman with animal ears quickly accuses her of being jealous, but the paladin denies it. Then the warrior extends her hand and asks her to hand over the collected information. The other refuses and says she will only show the report if there is some sincerity. With a smile, Shu Laihang asks what she means by that. Soon after, the paladin touches her companion's body, who calls her violent. With the report in her hands, she comments that this is what the other wanted, while the woman grumbles about being exposed. The reading then reveals that the knight abandoned the princess for the dragon, while the other complains about the strength of her fingers. Upon seeing the drawing of the knight in the report, Shu Laihang concludes that he really does look like a pervert. Soon, a scene of the boy with a red face and drooling is shown. Then the image of the dragoness with wings spread appears amid the smoke. Princess Alina then appears sitting on a cannon and says she never wanted such a tragic scene to happen. With her hands in claw-like positions, the dragoness shouts the name of her attack. She then summons a giant fire creature and unleashes the roar power of the evil dragon. Struck by the explosion, Princess Alina screams in pain amidst the flames. Shortly after, she emerges from the smoke and accuses the dragoness of acting artificially. The creature then licks her finger, while a hand points at her and commands her to stop being cute. With that, the princess grips the cannon's fuse tightly. Sitting on the weapon, Alina lights the fuse and fires at her enemy. From afar, guards watch the battle and decide not to interfere. The dragoness then opens her arms and receives the attacks, declaring that the sensation is good and comfortable. Princess Alina reacts in shock at what she just heard. She then kicks the cannon several times and fires more shots, while the dragoness begs for more force. The knight observes the smoke of battle and comments on the feminine perfume in the air. With that, the king and prince accuse him of being a pervert for spying on the women's fight. The knight then shouts back that they have no right to say anything, while the royal family hides. By the cannon's side, he laments the rule that prevents disqualified players from attacking NPCs. At this moment, the knight concludes that everything went off script and that the kiss was the origin of all evil. Soon after, Princess Alina prepares to attack the dragoness, saying she would rather do that than follow the script with him. With that, the creature cries that she can't endure the attacks anymore, and that something will happen if this continues. The knight then comments on her more feminine appearance. Shortly after, the dragoness sits on the ground while he watches her in confusion. A hand gestures in the air, drawing attention. The boy approaches and asks what is wrong with her. She then grabs him, leaving him confused. The dragoness confesses that she can't endure a certain addiction anymore, increasing the knight's confusion. He soon shouts that her addiction is taking baths while she makes a face and the princess looks on. With that, the dragoness asks him to hold on and runs off to find a lava bath. The knight tries to stop her by grabbing her tail and reminds her that he is her meal ticket. At that moment, the princess turns to them and asks if they really believe they can negotiate with her. Then Alina appears with a bomb on the cannon, while the guard panics and the knight denies the accusations. Soon after, she puts the bomb inside the cannon and screams that everyone's going to die. The guards cry out in panic, wondering how the princess managed to put something so big inside. Shortly after, a giant fireball is launched from the cannon in their direction. The knight and the dragoness then watch the massive sphere of energy coming toward them. With that, the boy raises his hand and summons the power of the thunder sword. A lightning bolt cuts across the sky and strikes the top of the castle with full force. Surrounded by energy, he prepares to create the thunder barrier. Soon, the grid of lightning emerges in front of them and blocks the fireball at the very last second. Thus, the knight watches as the lightning barrier successfully holds the attack. Then the fireball explodes against the shield, raising a cloud of dust and smoke. Amid the smoke, Princess Alina wonders if the attack hit its target. Soon the barrier dissipates, revealing that the warrior and the dragoness are unharmed, and he concludes that the defense works. From afar, the king and prince comment that they came out completely unscathed. With that, the knight mocks the game and raises both middle fingers. Suddenly, a strong light from above draws his and his winged companion's attention. A lightning bolt then descends from the ceiling and destroys the hall's floor with a massive impact. As they fall, the two wonder what just happened. The dragoness accuses him of breaking the floor, but the armored man complains about the terrible quality of the flooring. From the hole in the ceiling, a message mocks him, while the guards watch from below. In free fall, the knight yells at the game, accusing him of cheating because it doesn't have the strength to defeat him. He continues his tirade, saying the game doesn't dare face him directly. Suddenly, his body lands on a soft surface. It is soon revealed that he landed on a white dragon, now gigantic and surrounded by magical circles. The creature claims it didn't want to save him and that the knight just happened to fall on its back. Meanwhile, the two rise through the hole in the hall's ceiling. The dragoness then destroys the rest of the castle, leaving massive damage behind. Soon after, she flies through the city skies under the moonlight. Amid the rubble, Princess Alina screams in despair over her destroyed castle. One of the guards points to the sky and alerts the princess that they escaped. With that, Alina furiously orders her soldiers to pursue them. Far away, the knight rides the dragon as they fly farther from the city. He then comments that at that speed, the princess won't be able to catch them. The man praises the dragon for knowing how to fly, but the creature seems not to understand. Then the winged being turns to him and reveals that it doesn't know how to fly. Confused, the warrior asks what they are doing now, and the creature replies that it doesn't know either. Suddenly, the dragon stops gliding and the two begin falling from the sky. As they plummet, the knight screams at the creature not to stop, but she blames him for reminding her. Soon, they crash down from the sky and embed themselves into the roof of a house. Inside a barn, two cows watch as they land in the hay. Soon the cows wonder what kind of creatures those are. A cow then comments to its mother that the dragoness seems bigger than her. With that, the knight complains that the situation is very uncomfortable. Soon he turns and sees the dragoness lying on the hay, muttering that she feels very strange. With heart-shaped eyes, the warrior offers to help her. Then he runs toward the creature, who screams as he approaches. Suddenly, a giant cleaver embeds itself in the wooden divider, blocking the adventurer's path. He then turns to his companion and asks the barn's owner about the closed on Sundays sign. At that moment, a woman holding a pipe comments that what he brought is quite peculiar. She then brings the pipe to her mouth and lights it. The owner of the place reveals that she has already tried wolf milk, bear milk and lioness milk. Meanwhile, the knight watches the scene, and the dragoness remains seated in the hay beside the cows. With the pipe in her mouth, the woman turns to the creature and says that this is her first time drinking milk. Thus, the owner of the place apologizes to the knight, who looks at her awkwardly. With the dragoness hiding behind him, he explains that they were just passing through and that she was not for sale. Suddenly, a cleaver flies toward them and embeds itself into the pillar, while the woman screams that he doesn't know what's good. The warrior then turns in shock, seeing the weapon stuck in the wood beside his head. With that, the merchant snaps her fingers and threatens him for refusing the offer of the greatest royal trader of the Ashland Empire. He questions her about the title of royal merchant in such a small barn, leaving her irritated. Soon, the woman displays a scroll and explains that she only missed the exam because she overslept. The knight asks if she is the only useless one in the family who can't even get out of bed, and she tells him to shut up. Then the owner of the place points to the dragoness and declares that she will be sold anyway. With a smile on her face, she begins to think about what she could do with the dragon. The merchant imagines herself training the creature to become a milk-producing animal. She concludes that with this, the Royal Merchant Academy would certainly accept her. Suddenly, the dragoness's tail smacks the woman's body with a crack. The merchant glares at her, while the creature remains still and silent in front of her. With tears in her eyes, the woman covers her face and screams that the dragoness hit her. The creature then strikes her again and yells that she has never been disrespected by an herbivorous animal in her entire life. The knight watches the scene and concludes that he expected a queen, but found only a useless woman. Even after her apology, the dragoness grabs her and threatens to drink her milk, while the knight watches the situation unfold. Suddenly, a voice comes from the barn's entrance, announcing that this is the place. The knight then turns and wonders why more people showed up. Outside, a soldier informs Princess Alena that they fell in that region and laments the pursuit. With that, the princess orders one of her guards to investigate the place. The soldier approaches a calf and, showing a drawing, asks if it has seen a dragoness and a useless man. As soon as he asks, Alena yells at the guard, calling him an idiot for interrogating a baby. She then suggests that he ask the calf's mother, and the guard praises her wisdom. In the background, Prince Raji reacts disapprovingly to the scene. Hidden, the knight and the dragoness watch the group and call them idiots. While crying, the knight laments that this isn't a harem game where he could win over 100 female NPCs. Through the window, the merchant recognizes the newcomers as members of the Ashland royal family. She then observes Princess Alena and admires her noble, courageous, and beautiful aura. The merchant also notices the sacred emblem shining under the sunlight on the army's banner. With that, she wonders if Princess Alena might be a new goddess of war, recognizing her power. Soon, the woman turns to the window and tries to shout to the great goddess of war about the two fugitives. Suddenly, the dragoness's tail wraps around the merchant's head, preventing her from speaking. The warrior holds her from behind, while the creature explains that it would be a problem if she shouted now. Then the dragoness pulls the merchant's horn and calls her an inferior animal for almost exposing them. The knight then grabs her tail and calls her a disobedient heifer. With that, the merchant reacts to the touch with a muffled scream. While keeping her restrained, he says that she needs to be punished, and the woman wonders why her body is weakening. The winged companion watches the scene and concludes that his technique is even more intense than the one he used on her. With a smile on his face, the adventurer declares that the weak point of beast women is their tail. The dragoness then clasps her hands together and begins to imagine what it would be like if he did the same to her. Meanwhile, the merchant rides in his arms with her face bound by her own tail. With her mouth gagged, the woman lets out only a muffled sound of protest. Watching from a distance, the dragoness wonders if his touch would feel just as intense on her tail. Suddenly, the merchant trembles and cries out that what he is doing is dirty. Right after, the woman collapses to the ground in tears, leaving the knight confused about what just happened. The merchant then stands up and accuses him of desecrating the sacred land, shouting that the goddess of war will not forgive him. Irritated, he squeezes her cheeks tightly and speaks a few harsh words. The warrior presses her against the wall and asks if she plans to tell anyone about them after they leave. With a dark look, he declares that now she has only one option left, making the merchant realize his change in attitude. Then the knight extends his hand toward her, and the woman shrinks back, believing he's going to kill her. Unexpectedly, he throws her over his shoulder and declares that he will take her along with them. A malicious smile appears on his face as he thinks he must add such an exotic girl to his collection. The dragoness turns her head and mutters that at this point there is nothing more to be done. Surprised, the knight looks back, unable to believe she agreed so easily. With arms crossed, the creature decides that from now on the newcomer can handle this kind of touch, since she herself can't take it anymore. With the decision made, the knight opens the door and the group leaves the place. The dragoness then asks where they are going, and he replies that there is a forest ahead where they can hide. Carried on his shoulder, the merchant wonders why the two simply didn't kill her to silence her. She then concludes that perhaps they aren't as bad as they seemed. The group walks toward the forest entrance, while the merchant murmurs something. With the woman on his shoulder, the knight complains that she is a little heavy. Soon the dragoness says she is hungry, suggesting they should just eat her. In panic, the merchant starts struggling and pounding on his back, screaming that they are villains. Meanwhile, Alina slowly recovers from the impact of the previous blow. The princess drinks a cup of milk in one go, spilling the drink on her chest. With a furious scream, Alina throws the cup to the ground, enraged that they escaped. She then yells at her soldiers, questioning their usefulness for failing to capture the group. Prince Raji approaches and tells his sister not to rush, as a blind search will lead nowhere. Alina replies that he is a useless man with impure thoughts and has no right to say anything. With a confident smile, Raji declares that while he may be bad at other things, no one understands women better than he does. The prince then sniffs the air and says he can smell the pheromones of recently released female animals. He then raises 2 fingers and specifies that there are 2, to Alina's surprise. With a kick to the door, Raji declares his deduction that they went into the forest. Standing at the entrance, he invites her to follow him, stating that there is still time to catch them. Alina turns her face away and mutters that he had better not dare deceive her. Soon, the princess draws her sword and runs toward the forest, determined to capture them. As she moves away, a malicious smile appears on Raji's face. The soldiers approach and warn the prince that the forest is dangerous and lies on the country's border. With a dismissive gesture, he assures them that nothing will happen while he is around. The prince then orders the soldiers to wait there if they are afraid. Immediately, the guards bid farewell and wish him good luck, while Raji walks into the forest. Already inside the woods, Alina declares that the knight and his companions will not be able to escape. With a sinister smile, Raji appears behind her and whispers that his dear sister will not be able to escape either. Thus, a dragonfly lands on the dragoness's horn, and she grumbles, calling the knight a stinking pig. Lying on the grass, the creature turns her head to the sky and complains that she is hungry. With their stomachs growling, the knight and his companion lie side by side, and he says he knows how she feels. Irritated, the dragoness laments that if he really knew, he wouldn't have sent that cow to look for food. As soon as she finishes the sentence, the merchant returns with her arms full of fruit, announcing her arrival. The woman then shows what she collected, explaining that it was all she could find. Right after, she bites into an apple eagerly and exclaims that it is very sweet. The merchant offers the fruit to the 2 of them, inviting them to try it. The dragoness refuses and demands meat, leaving the woman confused as to why the fruit wasn't good enough. With a dramatic gesture, the creature declares that fruit is disgusting and only inferior beings eat something so sour. While the merchant is shocked by the insult, the knight eats an apple and discreetly tries to locate her tail. Outraged, the woman points at the dragoness and yells that she shouldn't belittle the food she worked so hard to find. She then says she is only serving the creature because she isn't strong enough to beat her in a fight. Sitting down on a log, she reveals that she got badly hurt while searching for that food. Touching her scraped knee, she complains of pain, making the dragoness look at her with a surprised expression. Suddenly, the creature grabs the merchant's leg and shouts that her flesh smells good, asking for a bite. The woman pulls her leg back and screams for her to get away, calling her a pervert. The knight steps between them and begs the 2 to stop fighting. With the merchant on one side and the dragoness on the other, he offers to take any blow instead. To their astonishment, the woman then kicks him in the face with all her strength and says she'll grant his wish. Lying on the ground, the knight mutters that this wasn't the kind of blow he wanted, while the dragoness stares at him. The creature then accuses him of interfering only because he didn't want to give up the cow woman. She turns her face away sadly, lamenting that even after all this time together, he still chose her. Quickly, he jumps up and stammers that he actually values her more, and the dragoness asks if he is telling the truth. With a serious look, the knight confirms what he said with conviction. The creature steps closer and asks if he will let her join and what will happen next, leaving him confused. She then specifies that she means what he intends to do with the merchant, asking if she needs to be clearer. Realizing the insinuation, the knight gets a nosebleed as he imagines what she means. The dragoness continues, saying she would actually be satisfied if he just gave her some attention. With a mischievous smile, he replies that he wouldn't mind giving her much more than that. To her surprise, the creature breaks off one of her horns and yells that he should have said that earlier. Shocked, the knight points and asks how she managed to tear a horn from her own head. He then realizes he is focusing on the wrong thing. With that, he shouts that he never said he would eat her. And the dragoness asks why he agreed to let her join. Panicked, the merchant begs them not to eat her and curses the creature to suffer from constipation. The knight comments on such a cruel curse, and the dragoness replies that he has no moral ground to say anything. The merchant cries out for help, but the creature says no one will save her, and that she loves to hear her prey scream. Suddenly, a voice cuts in, telling her not to think she can do whatever she wants just because no one is around. The voice calls the dragoness worthless trash and orders her not to come any closer, leaving her irritated by the interruption. Right after, the knight appears from behind and covers her mouth with his hand, telling her to keep quiet. Thus, a sword falls from the sky and strikes the ground with a heavy impact. Hidden behind the vegetation, the group watches Alina and Raji from a distance. The knight and his companions recognize the woman as the goddess of war. While they observe, the prince tells his sister not to waste her energy, and the princess wonders if he was hiding his true strength. With a dark gaze, Raji warns that this is not the palace and that he won't go easy on her. Alina then realizes that she wasn't brought here to chase the knight and questions his true intention. With his arms wide open, he asks what fun there would be in merely chasing fugitives. Then he advances with a laugh laugh and declares that he brought her here for a more interesting activity. The princess steps back, shouting for him not to come closer, while the prince claims they will do something truly entertaining. When insulted, he grows furious and yells that this was the nickname he hated the most. Olenna declares that she has despised him ever since they were children. Holding his head in his hands, the prince laments that she always does this, no matter how much he tries to please her. The princess questions his actions, saying that such behavior only drags him down further. In a burst of rage, Raji shouts that her attitude only fuels his fury. The prince advances, saying that she will no longer be able to despise him. He tries to force her to accept his proposal, but Olenna refuses. As she screams to be released, the knight watches the forbidden scene in shock. With a laugh, Raji boasts that his dragon claw technique is not easy to escape from. The knight clenches his fist, aware that he is far too weak to defeat him in direct combat. At his side, the dragoness trembles upon hearing the name of the technique and admits that it is terrifying. Still hidden, the warrior tries to remain calm to find another way out. Unexpectedly, a stone flies and hits the prince's head. Right after, the merchant leaps from hiding and demands that he release the goddess of war. With their position revealed, the knight realizes that he has no choice but to fight. The woman points at Raji and calls him the nightmare of the royal family, forbidding him to insult the goddess. The prince stares at her with a smile, commenting on how beautiful she is. Clasping his hands, he asks Olenna how she didn't know she had such a beautiful friend, but the princess denies knowing her. Olenna then shouts for the merchant not to interfere, warning that this enemy is beyond her reach. With a smile, the woman asks the goddess of war not to worry, even though she knows she cannot defeat him. Right after, she turns and drags the knight out of hiding by the collar of his armor. Thus, the merchant declares that this knight must be the one to resolve the situation. With a push, she throws him to the ground in front of everyone to his despair. Suddenly, the warrior finds himself fallen before Olenna and Prince Raji. Both of them let out a grunt and the knight points his finger, shouting that they shouldn't complain about someone who came to help. Then he turns to Olenna and demands that she stop wearing that expression of someone who has already accepted her fate. Suddenly, Raji appears at his side and warns him for being too loud, revealing that he has long wished to defeat him. The prince grabs him by the collar and calls him a useless failure who only takes advantage of Olenna's kindness. With a furious shout, he lifts him by the collar and demands to know what right he has to possess anything at all. Raji continues his tirade, asking why a man like him has so many women around him. Pointing his finger, he expresses his outrage at the situation. Then he shakes him violently and yells for him to shut up, accusing him of showing off on purpose. With a smile, the prince asks where the little dragoness is, the one who always follows him around. Still hiding, the creature debates whether she should protect her meal ticket or surrender to the fear of that man's terrifying technique. While they fought, Raji taunted the knight, saying that even the dragoness had abandoned him. Struggling to breathe, the warrior remembered seeing the prince trembling with fear behind the queen's skirt. With a crooked smile, he asked if he wasn't the noble who lured girls into deserted places. Shocked by such audacity, Raji demanded he repeat what he had just said, but his opponent refused. The knight then declared that good words are never repeated, and that anyone who didn't hear them is a dog. With a manic laugh, the aggressor glared at him and said that if he didn't want to talk, that was fine. Next, the prince tightened his grip and shouted that he would never speak again. Suddenly, the fighter's vision began to blur, and he wondered if his eyes were deceiving him. Through his distorted sight, he saw the label above Raji's head change from NPC of Justice. The text shifted, and the new designation that appeared was Disqualified NPC. Terrified, the knight's eyes widened at the sight of the new title floating over the prince. Even as he was being suffocated, he began to understand that perhaps everyone in the game had a predetermined destiny. He recalled that when a player or NPC behaved abnormally, their status changed. He then concluded that anyone who strayed from the path was judged as disqualified by the system. Soon the warrior understood that the prince had violated his initial settings, while Raji continued to scream. Realizing that both of them were disqualified, he unleashed an electric strike on his enemy. With a swift movement, he threw his opponent to the ground and shouted that he could not be defeated by someone like him. While the women watched in shock, he began punching the prince on the ground without stopping. In fury, the knight showed no trace of mercy. The dragoness watched the scene from afar, astonished by it all. Lying on the ground, the prince wondered how this could be possible. Suddenly, a disqualified player notification appeared, and the fighter grew confused at the sound he heard. Right after, he noticed a faint progress bar had appeared in his vision. The warrior questioned the meaning of the word rehabilitation that had surfaced. Without a second thought, he smashed the prince's head against the ground. With the impact, he noticed that the numerical value in the progress bar had increased. He then slammed him down again, and the bar rose another point. With a kick, the progress bar increased by 2 points as the prince begged for him to stop. The knight realized that the more key points he hit, the more the score increased. With the prince already defeated and holding a white flag, he decided to take things to another level. With a smile, he stated there was no problem in striking a few thousand more points. Before he could do anything, Alena suddenly appeared and drove her sword into her brother's back. The knight looked on in shock as the princess struck the fallen prince. With a cold expression, Alena muttered that he was stressing her life. Then the princess attacked again, shouting insults. Alena continued while the group watched, not knowing what to do. Clutched by both women, the warrior froze in fear as he heard the princess ask if that made him happy. The merchant murmured that this goddess of war was nothing like she had imagined. The knight suggested it was better not to interrupt her and decided to flee, carrying the two in his arms. Just as the group turned to leave, Alena ordered them to stop immediately. With her foot on the prince's back, the princess asked if it was appropriate to leave in silence. Alena then composed herself and said he was still as rude as before, with his NPC of justice status shining. The knight was horrified to realize that her personality hadn't changed, concluding that she was the greatest bug in the game. While the merchant tried to explain herself, he grabbed her and shouted that if they were going to fall, it would all fall together. With an empty gaze, Alena approached the fallen knight and slowly raised her hand. In panic, the warrior crawled backward and screamed at her not to come any closer. Unexpectedly, Alena stops and places her hand on the knight's head, and he embraces her in a protective gesture. With a smile, the young woman remarks that he's a good person for saving her without holding a grudge, leaving him confused. The princess then declares that because of this, she will forgive everything that happened before, which frightens him even more. With an air of superiority, she insists that she is not a cruel and merciless heiress. The warrior yells that she absolutely is and demands to know who else she could be if not exactly that. Alena then raises her foot toward him and says that all he needs to do is one thing. She demands that he kiss her foot to prove his loyalty, and the man laments, realizing it won't be so easy. With a piercing look, the princess dares him to refuse right away. Hiding the sword behind her back, she thinks that everyone who saw her in that state must perish. Without hesitation, the knight seizes her foot and kisses it. The sudden gesture leaves the noble woman completely shocked and speechless. With enthusiasm, he begins licking her foot, while the dragoness watches the scene in disdain. The man raises his face and asks if that is enough for the princess. With her body trembling, Alena lets out a sharp cry of surprise. Seeing her reaction, the knight smiles, telling her to be careful. As soon as she loses balance, the warrior supports her in his arms and asks if the princess is all right. With a gallant smile, he praises the softness and sweetness of her feet, but the young woman orders him to shut up. The man continues, saying she is a sweet and beautiful princess to any man. With a gleam in his eyes, he licks his lips and says he can hardly wait. Then he holds her foot and whispers that he will comfort every inch so that she remains in good health. The princess then lets out a scream, overwhelmed by the situation. With her body trembling, she reacts with a sharp slap to his face, and he releases her immediately. Falling onto the grass, Alena says she forgives him for that but still insults him. With his hand on his face, the knight concludes that a princess raised in a cave would not be able to withstand his gallant advances. The warrior strikes a victorious pose and boasts of his exceptional performance that day. The dragoness comments that the stinking pig actually smells unusually good, while the merchant questions her peculiar taste. Sword in hand, Alena decides she must flee from this man if she doesn't want to live an unhappy life. The princess laments being royalty yet still having to endure situations like this. As she complains, she bumps into a soldier and wonders if her luck could get any worse. Just then, a military man approaches and says they have finally found her. The soldier explains that they were worried about the princess, imagining what could have happened to her and the prince. Shocked, the warrior says nothing. With question marks appearing over his head, the soldier stammers. He then points at the corpse on the ground and asks if it is the prince. Quickly, a Harris interrupts and insists that it is not Raji's body. Furious, Alena explains that it is nothing more than animal droppings. With wide eyes, she screams that the soldier must have misheard, because the prince has not been defeated. The military man looks relieved and asks if that really isn't the prince's body. Right after, he makes a grimace and questions once again if it is indeed the body of the hare. Alena then grabs the man and strangles him violently so that he won't reveal her secret. Another soldier begins to shout upon seeing the scene. Then he cries out that Princess Alena is responsible for Prince Raji. In the middle of the forest, a companion is stunned by the news. The soldier screams that the princess is forcing the prince to have diarrhea. With that announcement, an officer and even Alena herself wear expressions of utter embarrassment. Nearby, a fully armored warrior exclaims in surprise at hearing the report. Next, the soldier twists the story and asks if the princess discovered that the prince was gay. With that, the men hurry away to carry the confusing news back to the palace. Soon, the paladin realizes that perhaps letting the rumors spread this way is not so bad. Meanwhile, in a distant kingdom surrounded by forests, with a punch to the table, the king reacts furiously to some news. Before the royal couple, a soldier reports that Princess Alena wants to hold a ceremony for the two of them. Not understanding the expression, the queen asks what it means while holding a dictionary. Awkwardly, the messenger apologizes for being Chinese and prepares to explain the real meaning. With a shout, he reveals that she intends to spy on the king and queen, leaving the couple in panic. Next, one of the guards unfolds a wanted poster with a cute drawing of the princess, offering 10 gold coins for her capture. The knight steps closer and asks if the picture is of her as a child, while the label disqualified NPC appears above Alina's head. With an expression of deep disappointment, he looks away and wonders why people have to grow up. The merchant approaches with her eyes sparkling with admiration and praises the goddess of war for her cuteness. Annoyed, the dragoness accuses her of enjoying the attention even though she had found it disgusting when praised in the same way. Frightened, the captain tries to explain that the capture order came directly from the king and that they had nothing to do with it. The other warriors agree and shout that they are innocent, suggesting that she should take out her anger on the king instead. The dragoness watches with disdain and comments that their pathetic posture, begging for mercy, is disheartening. The knight realizes that Alina's condemnation is what turned her into a disqualified NPC. He then reflects that being abandoned by one's own parents in such a cruel way would be difficult even for the most insensitive person. With a touch on her shoulder, the warrior tries to cheer her up, telling her not to be discouraged. He continues saying that the choice of such a cute picture proves that her parents still care, which only irritates the princess further. Alina then stares into the void and whispers that in the end, it was exactly as she imagined. With a dark face, the young woman wonders aloud if that is the useless image her parents have of her. In a fit of rage, she charges at one of the soldiers and shouts that human stupidity should also have its limits. Furious, Alina tears apart the wanted poster and complains that such a weak and cheap picture would only attract perverts. With a gesture of disdain, she destroys the poster and declares that no assassin with the slightest ambition would accept that job. Suddenly, the scraps of paper fly and strike the face of a hooded figure who had been watching from afar. The mysterious silhouette then approaches and aims a bow at the group, who react in surprise. Alina glares at her and asks if she is one of those unambitious spies she had just mentioned. The hooded archer remains silent, refusing to answer the princess's provocation. With a look of contempt, the warrior concludes that the woman must surely be a pervert. As soon as she finishes her sentence, the girl takes her by surprise. The archer prepares to shoot, and Alina thinks she must be insane. The princess then wonders, shocked, why anyone would work so hard for only 10 gold coins. The merchant recognizes the bow made of crocodile bone and the arrows tipped with porcupine spines. With a hand over her mouth, she wonders if that person could be who she was thinking of, and the knight asks if she knows her. The woman confirms and laments not having recognized her earlier. She then describes the figure as the human hunting dog, known for countless blood debts and flame-shaped earrings. The merchant continues, saying that her gray-purple eyes, which shine even in the darkness, leave no doubt about her identity. She reveals that the archer belongs to the feared family of hunters who made numerous nobles scream in agony. Immediately after, she describes the crest of the black-green forest family, a cockroach holding a rose. The woman explains that the family's heiress is the only elite spy with 18 bounties on her name. The archer then reveals herself as Ira Lyre, the boar knight mounted on a giant creature. Hearing the title, the knight reacts with disdain, thinking her nickname is rather lame. He quickly reflects that if the woman is as powerful as the merchant describes, the situation will become very difficult. Meanwhile, the archer, identified as a legal NPC, realizes the task will not be easy at all. The warrior turns to speak with the dragoness, but discovers she has vanished from his side. Suddenly, the companion appears in front of the archer and the princess, greeting them with a casual wave. With a curious gesture, she pulls the hood covering the boar's head, exclaiming that it really is a pig. The dragoness then approaches the spy and stares at her with an intrigued look. Seeing her gaze, the archer asks if the dragoness considers her filthy. The knight panics at the unexpected question and shouts for help, also curious about the answer. Chapter 14. Thus, the soldiers question aloud if she is really guilty, since only a fool would ride something like that. From afar, other guards comment that despite keeping her composure, she must already be full of wounds. With her face flushed, the archer grips the fur of her boar, which lets out a pained grunt. At that moment, the knight becomes irritated and shouts that no one should dare question the future head of the black-green family. Right after, he defends her, saying it is a great offense to doubt the backside of a young spy. To prove the heiress's innocence, he declares that he will inspect it personally. Then the warrior lifts the archer's dress and comments that her skin is healthy and smooth, without a single flaw. Even without understanding his own action, he continues holding the fabric with a confused expression. After that, he steps away and walks in another direction, leaving the spy speechless atop her mount. Reuniting with the other women, he turns and asks what they thought of the scene. At this moment, Alina, shocked, questions if it is possible that not even the lower part of her body has any weak spot. With a thoughtful expression, the knight hesitates before giving his final verdict on the matter. Then he whispers that he thinks the woman is a fraud, but the princess refuses to believe it, trusting her own perception. With a serious look, the young man insists he is sure, for she has something an elite spy would never possess. Immediately after, he begins drooling as he imagines her underwear being pink shorts with bunny prints. Completely red, the archer steams from her head out of sheer embarrassment. Because of this, the knight and the dragoness burst into laughter, while Alina and the merchant watch without reacting. Suddenly, the warrior's eyes widen in surprise. An energy thorn then strikes his back and sends him flying forward with a scream. Shocked, The merchant looks at the red object lodged in his armor. Fallen on the ground, he laments that his lack of knowledge put him in that situation. Right after, the thorn begins releasing a dark energy, revealing itself to be the blood curse of the black-green family. With a fiery aura around her, the archer glares at him, clearly enraged by the provocation. At that moment, Alina watches with a faint smile and comments that the situation is getting interesting. The princess faces her rival and says that despite being delicate, the things she shoots are extremely harsh. With a mischievous smile, she touches her own body and admits that it is difficult to resist. Soon after, she materializes a giant cannon and shouts that she is getting excited about the battle. Startled by the weapon's sudden appearance, the knight is struck by the merchant for thinking something so indecent. With her foot over the cannon, Alina challenges the spy of Drath to a direct duel. The princess yells that they will see who is the most resilient woman, while the merchant corrects her on the rival's name. With a cold look, the archer replies that the princess is far too arrogant. Then the woman leaps from her mount, which charges furiously toward the group. Propelled by a burst of energy, the spy rises even higher into the air. The soldiers watch in awe, commenting on the height of her jump and her bunny shorts. While floating, the archer chants an incantation and gathers dark energy in her hand. Surrounded by an aura of lightning, she prepares her attack and shouts a few words. With a determined look, she unleashes her special technique of triple explosion. The arrow, charged with energy, flies at high speed toward the group. Terrified, the merchant recognizes the explosive curse and warns everyone of the imminent danger. The group finds itself trapped between the airborne arrow attack and the boar's ground assault. At that instant, Alina glares at the approaching threat and mutters in irritation. With eyes blazing like fire, the knight prepares to unleash a flame spell. Immediately after it, he summons a wall of flames that rises to the skies to block the attack. Hit by the fire, the boar staggers back, grunting in pain from the impact of the flames. Then the archer is struck head-on by the wall and lets out a cry of surprise as her clothes burn away. Right after the impact, she lands barefoot on the scorched ground that still releases smoke. With her clothes destroyed, the woman is left wearing only her animal print undergarments. Amid the flames, the archer recognizes the high purity of the fire magic that struck her. At the knight's side, the dragoness laments the pathetic situation the stinking pig has gotten himself into. Irritated, the warrior turns and shouts for her to stop staring at him, asking if the wall of fire isn't more interesting. With a smile, Alina approaches and congratulates her companion for a job well done. Soon after, the princess taunts her enemy, saying she fights with dirty tricks because she cannot appear in public. Then the young woman lifts a massive cannonball with just one hand. Moments later, she materializes a pile of ammunition and declares that even though her rival is strong, she remains an indecent figure. At that instant, one of the spheres seems to cry as if begging not to be used. With a furious scream, the spy orders the princess to shut her mouth. She commands her boar to attack, and the creature bristles its spines in response. Soon the projectiles are launched, staying with the dark energy in the air. With her hand raised, the archer controls the spines and shouts for them all to die. At that moment, Alina loads a shell into her cannon and tells her opponent to stop showing off. With a swift movement, she lights the weapon's fuse. Standing on top of the cannon, the princess calls her trash, even worse than Raji, while the knight tries to stop her. The young man despairs at seeing the disqualified NPC and the legal NPC clashing, while Alina shouts that the other will be punished. With a leap, the princess lights the fuse and fires the weapon. Unexpectedly, the cannon misfires and sprays a yellowish liquid that splatters the archer completely. To everyone's surprise, the woman seems to enjoy the sensation and lets out a sound of pleasure as she is covered by the substance. Seeing this scene, the knight and his companions grimace in disgust and revulsion. Covered in the liquid, the spy sits on the ground with a satisfied expression. At that moment, Alina stares at her cannon, which now weeps in shame and wonders what went wrong. Soon after, the dragoness points out and reveals that the weapon had diarrhea, leaving the princess stunned. The cannon apologizes to its mistress, saying that its insides are broken and not working properly. With an angry kick, the young woman sends her defective weapon flying away. The princess tries to hide her embarrassment, saying that it's normal to have bad days. She then glares at the spy, who remains seated in the middle of the yellow puddle. Tired of the situation, Alina pushes the knight toward the woman and says he can have her. Meanwhile, the dragoness criticizes her for giving up, and the merchant defends her, saying it takes courage to retreat. The warrior approaches the enemy and says he's too lazy to fight her. Soon after, the dragoness and the merchant hold him and say the decision is his, since he is the real target. With a nervous smile, the knight yells that he doesn't want to get beaten up and that he's out of there. At that moment, Alina reacts with disappointment upon realizing that her battle partner intends to abandon her. Then the princess grabs him tightly and shouts that if they are to die, they will all die together. The young man laughs and tries to break free, saying the problem isn't his, while complaining about his partner's strength. In the end, the group agrees that fighting is a waste of time and decides to flee together. With arms crossed, the archer stares at them seriously and calls out to them from a distance. The woman asks if their performance has finally ended. At that moment, the knight turns and hurls an energy projectile from his hand in her direction. The attack explodes, creating a massive cloud of dust to cover the group's escape. Inside the smoke, he concludes that it is truly impossible to escape from a woman like that. Suddenly, a silhouette appears before him, leaving him completely astonished. The spy appears in front of him within the smoke and declares that the knight is very strong. With her bow in hand, the rival invites him to a direct and fair fight. Unexpectedly, the dragoness appears between the two and declares that she will be the one to fight. With the sudden appearance, the two women stare at each other in mutual surprise. Then the creature places herself in front of the warrior and begins explaining that the stinking pig is her prey. Unexpectedly, she claims she will not fight, leaving both the knight and the spy utterly confused. At that moment, the knight calls out to the dragoness, not understanding what was going through her head. Right after, he scolds her for having called him useless, while she replies that he only seems useful sometimes. Outraged, the young man yells that she cannot judge him without having used him, and that he will make her feel his power right now. At that instant, the spy intervenes and shouts for him not to do that. Then she calls the two of them disgusting and readies her bow wrapped in an aura. Moments later, she points the charged weapon at the creature, warning her to be careful. Instead of retreating, the dragoness opens her mouth and chomps down on the arrow, to the knight's astonishment. With a swift movement, she bites down on the weapon with force. As soon as she destroys the projectile, she chews the remains of the arrow. Totally shocked, the warrior screams, not understanding what had just happened. Soon he grabs his partner's cheeks and asks if there is a real person inside that body. Then he turns to the archer and accuses her of having no conscience for hurting a child. Without hesitation, the woman slaps his hand away and tells him to leave. Right after, she averts her gaze and mutters that the dragoness clearly didn't suffer any damage. With an air of superiority, the creature boasts of being a goddess and slaps the knight across the face. Then she threatens that she can digest even mammoth tusks. Right after, she changes expression and comments that a fresh pig would be delicious. With her eyes glowing, she turns toward the boar and stares at it intently. In an instant, she charges at the creature, shouting that the meat tastes better raw. While watching the scene, the spy prepares an action. With a quick gesture, she joins her fingers together and casts a reanimation curse. Soon, a crown of fire appears above her head as the spell is activated. At that moment, the knight notices the change in the environment, as do the dragoness and her prey. Then the archer floats in the air as dark energy spreads around her. With it, a massive wave of power surges forward, sweeping over everyone in the area. The merchant realizes that the woman is absorbing all the demonic energy from the surroundings. Right after, she begins to stagger and lose strength. As soon as she is supported, she explains that low-level monsters cannot withstand that kind of suction. Meanwhile, the dragoness also struggles not to be dragged away by the same energy. Seeing the situation, the knight quickly holds her by the waist to support her. Surprised by the contact, his partner calls him a stinking pig, but he asks her not to move so he can help her seal the energy. Soon, light emanates from his hand and a magic seal forms on her belly. Then he whispers in her ear to take a deep breath. With that, the dragoness asks him to let her go, complaining that she now feels her entire body heating up. Even without understanding, she comments that his chest feels hotter than lava. Meanwhile, the spy continues the ritual to imprison the cursed spirit inside her prey. As soon as she raises her hand, she summons all the fury within to be released at once. Nearby, the merchant still struggles not to be dragged away by the force of the magic. Soon, the paladin shouts for her to step aside, but the woman apologizes as she notices how soft she was. In the next instant, a dark energy attack charges directly toward the knight and his partner. Faced with this, the creature asks the stinking pig to hold her tightly, while he activates a protective shield. At the same time, he notices the other two being seized by tentacles of energy and shouts for the merchant not to take advantage of the situation. Unable to resist, both of them collapse to the ground and the paladin complains about being crushed. In response, the merchant says that not letting a cow press down is a matter of temperament, but managing to press is the cow's skill. Immediately after, the holy warrior yells for her to shut up after being touched in an unexpected place. With the barrier active, the knight wonders why he had to cast a protective spell at that exact moment. Without understanding his reaction, the dragoness only watches him in silence for a moment. Unexpectedly, she grabs him tightly and pulls him closer to her body. As soon as the young man begins to complain about the pressure, his expression changes as he notices the appearance of a new threat. Soon, a giant creature wielding an axe emerges before the archer, who comments that this was already over the top. Worried, the paladin asks the merchant what that creature was. In response, the entity lets out a loud, terrifying laugh. Right after, the creature comments that the lonely souls, asleep for centuries, had been summoned once more while the knight holds the dragoness in his arms. With a smile, the being declares that it has finally been called. Nearby, the paladin reminds the vendor about the hunt for the nobles of the Hegelin family. However, it is revealed that the cruel nobles of history did not die after being hunted by the Hegelin family. On the contrary, they were all gathered into a single extracted tooth and transformed into murderous spirits for the Hegelin family, and the spy commands Bluebeard to annihilate them. Surprised, the knight reacts upon hearing the name Bluebeard. Unexpectedly, he connects that name to the wife-killing monster from the Brothers Grimm tales. Then an image of Bluebeard from a book flashes through his mind. Enraged, the man called Bluebeard bursts into a demonic laugh as he is enveloped in a red aura. With a growl, he calls the dragoness a beautiful, fragrant female and orders her to drop the filthy insect as he charges forward. With a sudden approach, the protector realizes they are in trouble. Soon the antagonist draws near and shouts that she will be his new bride and that he will savor every inch of her soft skin. Disgusted, the dragoness screams that he stinks and rejects him, while the knight uses his body to shield her from the attack. However, the aggressor sneers mockingly, while the defender holds firm to protect the winged creature. With his arm wrapped in energy, he presses her tightly against his body. Then the knight yells at the creature, asking if it didn't hear the dragoness say she didn't want him. Hearing this, the dragoness stares at him and calls him a stinking pig in a low voice. Right after, he says she's a burden, and the dragoness realizes his arm is being crushed. Desperate, she screams for him to let go before his arm is broken. In response, he tells the dragoness to shut her mouth and declares that it's not her decision when he should release or tighten his hold. He then explains that the bastard was trying to create a disgusting scene right in front of him. While the dragoness calls him a stinking pig once more, the knight declares he will not watch such a scene. With a shout, he glares at the creature and says it must be dreaming. Indignant, Bluebeard becomes furious and calls him an insolent brat. Next, the creature declares that he hates couples and will grant them their wish of dying together. Because of this, a wave of energy tentacles surges toward the two. Right after, Bluebeard prepares to devour them whole. At the last instant, the knight notices a perfect opportunity to strike. Taking advantage of the chance, the warrior hurls the dragoness toward the paladin and shouts for her to catch her. At once, the paladin yells that they cannot run away, but the ally assures her that the dragoness will take them somewhere safe. With a confident smile, he explains that she is a dragon and therefore can fly. As she is thrown, the winged creature protests, saying that wasn't what he was supposed to do. Immediately after, the knight declares that a real man is never betrayed and leaps into the creature's mouth. Then Bluebeard snaps his jaws shut at once. With that, the dragoness's eyes shine with an intense energy. Moments later, the knight slides down the monster's throat. He keeps falling inside the creature. When he finally lands, he complains about the horrible stench of the place. Holding his nose, he comments on the reek of an old man who hasn't bathed in a long time. Reflecting for a moment, he concludes that abstinence can leave someone oily. Even without understanding, he remarks how the monster's insides are soft, despite its exterior being made of bones. Soon he notices that the evil spirit's name is in red and deduces he can attack without restrictions. With a punch, he strikes the inner wall of the creature. With another blow, the entity's life bar appears, confirming his suspicion. At last, with a victorious smile, he declares that he has found the monster's weakest point. Outside, Bluebeard feels the urge to vomit and complains that the meatless insect he swallowed tastes terrible. With that, the dragoness, the paladin, and the merchant all fall to the ground together. As soon as they land, the warrior supports the winged creature in an awkward position. Right after, the enemy turns to them and mockingly asks if the little darling is heartbroken. With a gesture, he questions whether it is worth crying over a useless clown like that. Then Bluebeard states that she surely has never tasted a real man and offers himself for her to forget him. Outraged, the dragoness screams that she will never marry him because he doesn't even have a kite that flies. Completely offended, the aggressor glares at her, while she insists that not even the lowest insects would mate with him. Without stopping, the winged girl adds that besides not having a kite, he is ugly and has horrible breath. Next, she declares that a high-quality female of the dragon world despises trash that cannot have children. At her side, the paladin reacts in surprise to the dragoness's bold stance. With that, the warrior gets lost in her thoughts, imagining a romantic scene, until the merchant scolds her for picking the wrong time. Completely humiliated, Bluebeard cries with rage and screams that no woman had ever insulted him like that. Right after, he turns to the group and demands to know why this happened. In a furious outburst, he charges at them, and they realize the speed of the attack and brace for the worst. With a macabre smile, the villain rushes forward and teases them with his tongue, saying they have enchanted him. Disgusted, the dragoness complains about his old man's stench, while the paladin and merchant watch the scene in shock. With a swift move, the creature's tail strikes Bluebeard's face with a strong impact. Right after, she attacks him again with her wings spread wide, while the enemy screams for her to die. Seeing the scene, the paladin and the merchant celebrate for having been saved. Next, the dragoness gathers a powerful golden energy in her body. With that, the energy explodes around her as she yells that the creature is the Aryan one. With a new outfit, she scolds him for daring to lick the air in her direction. Soon after, she touches her own lips and whispers that not even the stinking pig had explored that place. With that, a fiery aura surrounds her as she grows angry, thinking he went into the monster's filthy mouth. In a fit of rage, she unleashes a massive blast of flames that takes Bluebeard by surprise. While the enemy screams as he burns, the paladin and the merchant celebrate the power of the dragon's breath. Even covered in flames, Bluebeard's outline remains visible. Instead of retreating, the creature laughs and asks the female to embrace him even more tightly in her fire. Surprised, the dragoness and the other girls cannot believe he does not fear dragon flames. With a look of disdain, the spy comments that the dragoness is far too naive. She then explains that Bluebeard died in a burning castle and is now tormented by hellfire, making him immune to the flames of a dragoness who has not yet awakened her bloodline. Confused, the young winged one wonders what a bloodline awakening could be. Next, the spy orders Bluebeard to end the fight quickly, and the villain complains that all of his successors are boring. With an evil laugh, he says it is a shame to kill such a beautiful female without torturing her first. At that moment, energy tentacles surge toward the dragoness. As soon as they reach her, they wrap around her tail and drag her down. Watching the scene, the spy comments on how low that creature's level really is. Unexpectedly, the knight's voice echoes, asking if low-level people enjoy calling others low-level. Totally surprised, the spy reacts, not understanding where the voice came from. Bluebeard himself also turns and shouts, asking who is speaking. Right after, the knight's voice reminds him that he is the undead inside his belly, and that he had already warned him. With that, golden energy swords begin to materialize in the air to the paladin's surprise. Amid dozens of blades, the warrior's voice declares that he will never allow horns to be placed upon his head. In the next instant, the swords pierce Bluebeard's body from the inside out. Furious, the enemy screams that he knew it was that cursed insect behind everything. He then questions whether a few broken swords could pierce his bone armor, while the attacks are repelled. With a mocking laugh, the creature declares that he has yet to see the endurance of a ghost. Soon after, he notices the swords have disappeared and looks around amid the smoke. Unexpectedly, a single blade lodged in his armpit surprises him, while the knight's voice comments on the softness of that area. Inside, the warrior grips the fleshy wall and states that it was far too soft. With that, the monster cries out in pain as the sword in his armpit begins to shine intensely. In the next moment, the knight emerges and declares that he will crush him as if he were an egg. As soon as the creature screams, the knight appears behind it and strikes, making his progress bar rise. With a smile, he prepares to deliver another sword blow. Next, the warrior mocks him for being an old man handing out free experience. Right after, he continues his assault and comments that it would be a shame to kill him without torturing him a little first. From the pain of the strike, the enemy drops his weapon in midair. Immediately, the giant axe falls toward the dragoness and the other two. Without hesitation, the winged creature pushes the paladin and the merchant aside and yells for them to get out of the way. With that, she places herself in front of the axe to receive it, while the vendor warns she'll be split in two. At the last second, the weapon's blade stops just inches from her body. The dragoness then manages to catch the axe using only the strength of her tail. The paladin and the merchant watch the scene completely shocked by what they see. From the force of the impact, the young winged one's clothes come apart while a strong light surrounds her. Suddenly, a torn piece of cloth falls onto the knight's sword, and he comments that he had only been gone for a moment. When he reappears, he covers his companion's body with his cloak. Then the knight embraces her and asks if she feels no shame as a dragon for having lost even her underwear. While holding the dragoness, he reflects that the hero saving the maiden cliché never gets old. Right after, he imagines his partner scolding him for not telling her he was alive and for leaving her worried. Still in his imagination, the winged creature playfully and energetically attacks him. In reality, the dragoness strikes him in fury, screaming that he's an idiot for not telling her he was alright. Because of this, the warrior takes such a beating that he begins to think her affectionate attacks were lethal. Even while bleeding, he murmurs that he missed that sensation. Watching the scene, Bluebeard comments on the pleasure of being crushed between thick thighs and receiving a loving blow. With a sigh, the creature says he had only felt such tender happiness when he killed those women, and the knight shouts for him not to compare the situations. Right after, Bluebeard launches a tentacle attack and vows to tear the woman apart before his eyes. The knight and the dragoness lock eyes in silence for a moment. Next, he orders her to hide behind him. With a smile, the warrior calms her and asks her not to interfere with his hero moment. With that, the dragoness agrees and leaps onto his back. Unexpectedly, her heel strikes him in a sensitive spot. The knight's face contorts in pain and shock from the sudden impact. While his partner comments about a bone sticking out of his backside, the knight desperately begs her not to move. Right after, her foot slips and hits him squarely once again. With the impact, the warrior screams in pain as he runs uncontrollably. Unable to stop, he keeps running and shouting across the battlefield. Even with the dragoness on his back, the knight cannot contain his cries of agony. Soon after, he accuses his partner of trying to kill him, but she apologizes for having forgotten about the thorn in her heel. Seeing the scene, Bluebeard looks confused, while the warrior yells that he doesn't care anymore and will die anyway. With that, a sacred light emanates from his body, and the creature screams for him to stop. Through tears, the knight cries that he cannot halt the energy. Immediately, the aura strikes Bluebeard with tentacles of light, dealing continuous damage. Totally shattered, the monster wonders why this was the outcome. At the same time, the knight weeps, not understanding why things ended this way. With their faces side by side, both lament the pathetic conclusion of that fight. Soon after, the warrior walks away carrying the dragoness, while Bluebeard's spirit vanishes. Finally, the creature's presence fades completely. Nearby, the paladin and the merchant celebrate the victory enthusiastically. Next, the dragoness hugs him tightly and congratulates him, while he begs her to release him before suffocating him. With that, he realizes the pain in his backside lessened after gaining experience. Suddenly, the spy lands on the battlefield. Seeing her ready an arrow in the air, the knight tells the dragoness to hold on tight. In an instant, one of her energy arrows hits him squarely in the arm. Even surprised by the speed, he notices he couldn't block the attack completely. Right after, the spy asks him why he toyed with her for so long if he was already that strong. With a smile, he replies that for now he couldn't get hard for her. Then he comments that despite that, he found it very interesting to play with her. Unexpectedly, the knight yanks the arrow from his arm and throws something in her face. Thus, the knight casts a wind spell and vanishes into a green mist. Because of this, the spy covers her face to protect herself from the smoke surrounding her. Soon, the woman curses him as a bastard while wiping her burning eyes. After that, she vows to kill him when she meets him again. At the same time, the warrior runs through the forest carrying the dragoness and the merchant, followed closely by the paladin. While the two women pant, the guardian yells that they aren't even running to be this tired. Suddenly, the knight trips on a root and lets out a scream as he falls. With a tumble, everyone crashes awkwardly onto the ground. Right after, the dragoness lands and rolls across the soft earth. As soon as she stops, the creature complains that she's swollen and demands that the stinking one let her go. Lying on the ground and bleeding, the merchant cries out that her companion has hurt himself again, but the paladin realizes that wasn't the reason. Moments later, the holy warrior and the vendor notice a cliff and comment that the real problem will come if they can't cross it. Because of this, the paladin emphasizes that the outcome could be far worse than just an injury. Meanwhile, the spy advances riding a wild boar and is called crazy. With a determined gaze, the woman declares that she won't let them escape no matter what. Soon, the merchant despairs of her speed, while the paladin suggests they'll only have a chance if something makes them fly. Hearing this, both turn in silence and stare at the dragoness with great expectation. Surprisingly, the creature asks who's supposed to fly, and the two shout that only she could do it. At that moment, the knight intervenes and asks them not to pressure her, since his companion's abilities are very limited. Still, he suggests that instead of worrying, they should do something more relaxing. With a mischievous smile, the man turns to the three women and asks who will be the first in the fight. Hearing the unexpected proposal, the dragoness, the paladin, and the merchant all look completely stunned. In the meantime, the spy notices their clothes hanging from a branch at the edge of the cliff. Soon, she approaches and wonders if the group might have fallen into the abyss. Impatient, she orders the boar to shut up after it grunts at her. Moments later, both approach a small wooden cabin hidden in the forest. With a charge, the animal violently smashes the cabin door open. Right after, the spy asks if he's sure they're inside. Suddenly, the silhouette of a person with cat ears appears in the darkness of the cabin. With a swift motion, the hunter turns and grabs the hidden figure. With that, she is forcefully pulled inside and lets out a scream. Inside, the spy grips the girl by the neck and asks if she isn't exactly the one she was looking for. However, the girl reacts unexpectedly, attacks, and throws the woman aside, soon being identified as a member of the wolf clan. As she recovers from the strike, the spy notices the baskets in the corner of the cabin. Without hesitation, the girl steps closer and questions the woman's relationship with the knight. With eyes brimming with tears, the girl explains that she was frightened by being grabbed like that and that she doesn't know the group. Hearing the explanation, the hunter notices the coincidence and realizes she may have been mistaken. Therefore, she apologizes, saying she didn't mean to hurt civilians, and asks for help to find the knight, wondering if they might be part of the same group. In response, the girl clarifies that they only asked for the direction to the sanctuary and left right after. Suddenly, the girl hugs her and asks if she and the knight are very powerful enemies. Then she comments that only truly frightening people would dare enter the sanctuary at night. In addition, the girl praises the spy for having the courage to wear such a cute bunny attached to her outfit. With a shy smile, the woman replies that the girl has good taste. However, with an intimidating gaze, the girl warns that anyone who dares to challenge her will be crushed without mercy. At last, the hunter is left completely shocked by the young girl's sudden change of personality. Faced with the sudden threat, the spy envisions her rabbit being mistreated and reacts in horror. Once she regains her composure, the woman thanks the girl for the information about the sanctuary. As she moves away, the girl asks if she truly intends to go to the sacred place. With a firm gaze, the spy declares that anyone who dares to harm her rabbit will die, leaving the girl impressed with her determination. At the last moment, the young one tries to stop her from leaving and begs her to wait. Already mounted on the boar, the hunter turns and asks if her little bunny doesn't fear that creature. Coldly, she replies that it is none of the girl's business and rides away with the animal. Watching from a distance, the girl softly comments on the unexpected boldness of a spy. Back inside the cabin, the young one approaches the baskets and questions whether the woman was truly as frightening as they claimed. Hidden among the baskets, everyone confirms the terror the woman inspires, while the dragoness remarks that what she pulled out was big and stinky, leaving the paladin confused about whether she had lost something. With a smile, the knight reassures the girl, explaining that the dragoness often says things that cause misunderstandings. Soon after, he thanks the young one for helping them mislead the spy. With a shy smile, the girl replies that it was nothing, since it's rare to meet such a handsome knight. Then she comments that she feels sorry he had to endure the shame of almost losing his pants. With shining eyes, she turns to the dragoness and says it's the first time she has seen the legendary scary and powerful creature of evil in person. With an air of superiority, the dragoness crosses her arms while the knight shrinks in embarrassment. Soon, the girl comments that it's pathetic to see her reduced to hiding among humans, and the dragoness replies that she doesn't meet her pity. Meanwhile, the paladin observes the girl's clothes and seems to recognize their origin. Without giving time for explanations, the guardian grabs her and insists that she already knows her own flaws and doesn't meet comments. Moments later, she complains that the place is filthy and demands a proper bath, and the young one confirms there is one available. As soon as she opens the door, the girl reveals a muscular man posing in the bathhouse. At this, the merchant approaches the girl and asks what the advantage was that she was about to mention before the disadvantage. Instead of answering, the young one simply hands her a cloth, leaving her confused. With a smile, she explains that when one is completely exhausted, it's necessary to relax and let the hot water wash away the worries. Hearing these words, the merchant is so moved that her soul seems to leave her body for an instant. Then she points to a drawing on the cloth and asks if that is the idol of the wolf clan. With a passionate gaze, the girl confirms that it is the wolf of her dreams. Finally, the merchant reveals that he used to be her customer when she sold milk, and that his body was truly oppressive. With shining eyes, the merchant whispers that he did that to attract other male wolves. Hearing the revelation, the girl screams in panic, while the merchant hums with a dark look. Observing the scene, the knight reflects that women can be terrifying for attacking in unexpected and fatal ways. With a cup in hand, he approaches the young wolf girl to try to talk. Soon after, the man tries to console her, saying that an idol scandal is normal, and that girls change their passions frequently. With her face resting on the table, the girl confirms that the idol was her new husband of the day, to the knight's utter shock. Awkwardly, he tries to change her perspective, saying that sisters last longer than husbands, then immediately questions what he just said. With an intense gleam in her eyes, the young one stares at him and comments that he is a very optimistic person. With an awkward laugh, the knight replies that only someone open-minded could tolerate having a label different from the others. At that moment, the reflection in her eyes reveals that he is a disqualified player. Shocked by the discovery, he realizes that she can see his true identity in the game. With a mysterious smile, the girl asks if he can also see the label of NPC of nuclear kindness hovering over her. Sitting at the table, the knight stares at her and asks who she really is. With a sad look, the young girl begins to answer by speaking her name. Stooping, she introduces herself as Lester Fifelton, daughter of the 15th generation of the Wolf clan. But he says that's not what he wanted to know. Seeing his reaction, the girl asks the knight not to get upset. Then she explains that her special ability isn't anything that impressive. The girl goes on to say that the Wolf clan is the strongest and most battle-ready race. Even coming from such a powerful lineage, she continues her explanation with a melancholic tone. Unexpectedly, she reveals that she was the only useless daughter ever born in the clan's entire history. In a flashback, she recounts that as a baby, she didn't even have the right to drink her mother's milk. Because of that, her mother would shout at her to open her mouth and try to feed properly. Out of patience, the woman would say it wasn't her fault and leave her crying alone. Soon, the extreme hunger or sheer survival instinct awakened a special ability in her. At that moment, the young girl realized that to survive, she would need to beg for her life. Once she made her decision, she threatened to reveal her mother's affair with the neighborhood prophet unless she was fed. Shocked by the revelation, her mother stared at her in disbelief, exposed as an adulterous NPC. Outraged by the news, the knight shouts that such an ability is a threat and questions how a baby could even talk like that. Ignoring it, the girl asks him not to bring up old matters. But the man reminds her that she was the one who started the story. Unexpectedly, he stands up and cuts her off mid-sentence. As soon as he asks about her adulterous mother, the young one reacts and claims she would never do something to betray the one who raised her. She then explains that her mother died trying to spy on the prophet's father, but he already knew the plan and killed her first. With a disdainful look, the knight comments that her family seemed completely unscrupulous. Soon after, the girl steps closer to him with a curious air. With innocent eyes, she asks if his red label is also for adultery, to the knight's utter despair. Right after, she takes his hand and says she understands the situation. With a smile, the young one says she believes in the knight, leaving him momentarily speechless. With a mocking tone, she adds that he's just a coward who wouldn't have the guts to cheat, leaving him in tears. Soon, she notices the long progress bar over his head and remarks that he must have been very strong before being disqualified. With that, he asks if she has ever seen someone with a red label who was also extremely strong. In response, the young girl says she saw someone recently but can't quite remember who it was. Unexpectedly, a voice from the bathhouse asks the little wolf sister to fetch some soap. Eagerly, the girl runs off to get it. Remembering that he has stored several, the knight follows her into the room and watches her search. Finally, the young one finds the soap near the stove. Noticing the water boiling, she asks the knight for help to put out the fire. He falls silent for a moment, reflecting on how to respond. With a disdainful air, he refuses to help and claims he's terrible at housework. Then he decides it's better to just hand over the soap, and the girl agrees to the favor. With the soap in hand, he hurries toward the bathhouse with an eager expression, planning to take advantage of the chance to peek. As he extends his hand to deliver it, the soap slips and falls to the floor. Seeing the opportunity, he lunges to pick it up and says he'll help. Unexpectedly, He slips on the wet floor and falls right into the bathhouse. Flat on the ground, he braces himself to finally see everything. When he looks up, he is completely shocked by the scene before him. Instead of the girls, the knight finds two monstrous creatures calling out to him. With a desperate scream, he laments not having found the kind he was expecting. Right after, a muscular male figure turns, catching the attention of the two. Without understanding the situation, the dragon complains that the princess had promised him a massage capable of removing 10 years of dirt from his back. With a laugh, the woman, now with a muscular body, asks if they were scared. The knight and the paladin glance at each other in silence for a brief moment. Completely confused, he wonders where all those muscles came from. The next moment, he is brutally beaten by the women. With his body covered in lumps and bandages, the young girl wonders how he got so injured. Then she questions if he accidentally saw the sisters' faces without makeup. Hearing the question, the knight denies it, leaving the girl even more confused. With tears in his eyes, he shouts that what he saw was a million times more terrifying. Unexpectedly, a voice from the bathhouse calls him a perverted knight. Recognizing the voice, he and the girl turn in fright. From behind the curtain, the woman adjusts her dress and comments on the simplicity of the skirt. Coming out of the bathhouse, she remarks that not even the simplest outfit can hide what is frightening. She then criticizes the dress for being as simple as the knight's mind, while the young wolf girl watches in admiration. With a reverent gaze, she asks if the great goddess of war didn't deceive her. Behind the curtain, the merchant awkwardly asks if that was really the right way to wear the outfit. While the girl and the knight agree that the clothing looks better on larger women, he reflects that his heart remains unmoved. Unexpectedly, the merchant runs out from behind the curtain with a scream of panic. Startled, the knight climbs onto the table and shouts upon noticing the dragoness's presence. Right after, he opens the curtain and asks what happened. At that instant, his eyes turn into hearts at the sight before him. Inside the bathtub, the dragoness complains that the towel won't go up no matter what and insists she isn't fat. Suddenly, the young wolf girl has a revelation and shouts that she finally understands. With that, she points to the dragoness and reveals to the knight that the one with the red label he was searching for was her. Confused, the creature questions him about the accusation, but he quickly denies it while she is identified as the area boss. Outraged by his hesitation, she punches him and throws him into the bathtub. With a pillow in her hands, the wolf girl explains that her house is very small and only has one room to sleep in. Therefore, she warns that they'll have to sleep on the floor, and the knight thanks her for the kindness. Unexpectedly, the dragoness hits him from behind with her tail. With an angry glare, she questions if everyone else is fine except her. Then she declares she will not sleep beside him and lies down with the paladin. Awkwardly, the young wolf bids them good night so as not to disturb their rest. As soon as the door closes, she and the knight wish each other a good night. With a gesture, someone puts out the lamp light. Lying on the bed beside the paladin, the knight sighs, unable to sleep. Soon after, he has a vision of the other three girls sleeping in a heap. With a determined gaze, he focuses on his thoughts. Unexpectedly, he realizes that the paladin is also awake. Carefully, he approaches her and tries to touch her. In a low voice, the princess tells him to stop searching and calls him an idiot. Without turning, the woman explains that he can't see those things when she isn't in the bath and asks if he's referring to the bath. With that, she advises him not to be surprised and says that if he had bathed with that dragon since childhood, he would have evolved too, while he wonders if that would be in a lava bath. Soon, he imagines the paladin muscular in a lava bath with the dragon and admits that, coming from her, that wouldn't be impossible. Then he ponders the strange relationship between the woman and the dragon who captured her, since the two bathed together. Because of that, the paladin orders him to stop speculating and affirms that her relationship with the dragon is not what the outside world thinks. Hey everyone, did you enjoy the story? I really liked it. If you want to follow the next part, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. See you in the next story, guys.